people always worry, especially teachers. Oh, this homeschool kid came into my geometry class and they have so many gaps in their algebra learning. My son wasn't great at math and now he does construction and specifically laser leveled excavation where he's like calculating things. You teach kids to solve problems and you don't have to worry about the textbook learning. I work with grown adults. I manage grown adults and I can't get some to think past, what do you want me to do?
Welcome back to the OpenEd podcast. I'm your sometimes host, Ella, and today I'm joined by Dave Hoffman. Dave, can you give us a little bit of a background? How did you get started in education?
I got started in education when I studied Spanish and I wanted to be an FBI agent. And that was my grand goal. And as I took all the tests and I got to the final interview with 9 agents, I didn't pass. And it was kind of a crazy time. And I thought, what am I going to do? Because I couldn't reapply for a year. And I thought, well, I have a Spanish degree and communications degree. And that's what I was going to the FBI for. And I thought, well, I'll try to teach. I'll teach while I'm waiting. And I never reapplied to the FBI. And I continued to teach and become an administrator. I started just subbing in Salt Lake City a little bit. And then we moved to Southern California to start my teaching career.
And why did you stay in teaching?
Well, I love teaching. I feel like that's one of my passions. I love teaching. I love the interaction with the students. They get my humor and I can joke with them a lot. Teaching was like, I couldn't believe I got paid to teach because it was fun every day. Granted, it was emotionally exhausting sometimes and I would come home dead, but I got off at 3:30, 4, right? So I'd go home in Southern California and just jump in the pool. So I de-stressed quickly. So it was a great time. I coached a little bit while I taught. And so that was fun for me. I got to coach high school basketball and water polo. It was just, I participated in almost everything you could think of, from home and hospital teaching to water polo coach to the senior class advisor to peer tutoring mentor I pretty much did it all.
And then you've also had experience in like charter and private schools as well. So what brought you to like the different sides of education, right? So you were a teacher, then an admin, and then all of a sudden you start foraying into these different models of education.
Yeah, that's because I wasn't really I guess I was raised through public education, as was my whole family. And we knew nothing different at the time. And there was nothing different at the time. But these days, and in the days that my children were young, there started to be all of these choices in education and all these things that we could participate in, that we could kind of customize the education according to our kids' needs. And I really jumped on board. My wife and I jumped on board with that. And that took my mind into different areas. And I thought, wow, these charter schools are serving a cool purpose. And I'd like to try to teach it, maybe be a principal in one of those and take a leadership charter or a charter that kind of aligns with our values or our focus, and see if, my kids attended some of those schools. As we homeschooled, they would come a partial schedule, or they even attended full year at a couple of them. So it was just kind of in thinking about alternative ways to educate that got me interested in working at charters and then private schools. I worked at a charter that was where I taught 7th through 12th grade boys all in one class, and they were all at-risk kids. Some were homeless in Southern California. And that was quite an experience. That matter of fact, those kids really left an impression on me. Just the fact that they could get to school, that they could get a uniform that complied with the school policies and things. It was awesome. We did a lot of work with those kids and a lot of hands-on, a lot of exploratory, experiential stuff, but a lot of just been around the block, I guess, a lot with different kinds of education. And of course, at the same time, I homeschooled my kids, which was never really popular with anybody in my realm.
Interesting. So I will ask about why you decided to homeschool initially, but um it sounds like you were interested in choices like that was your initial step into this alternative education, like kind of customizing your own education space. Like it sounds like from my experience, the majority of families that I talk to, right, they didn't intend to get into this. It was just kind of like, I need other options. I need to find something else because something's really not working for my kid. Why were you so intrigued by just like the idea of options? Like why was that something that was so interesting to you that you were like, we don't necessarily need it. Like nobody's struggling too bad, um but why not step into this?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think there's many reasons for that. First of all, my first daughter, we sent to kindergarten, and it was at a charter school, local charter school of people that we knew that ran it. We thought this will be great. And she went to charter school and in kindergarten, a couple weeks into it, she'd kind of, her personality changed quite a bit.
Mm.
She was a little more aloof. She became kind of sassy. And we were like, what's going on with our 5-year-old? And we just visited the school and we were just, you know, maybe kind of shadowed a few days and thought, you know what, there's nothing about kindergarten that we couldn't do at home. And her two sisters miss her horribly. And so it was kind of a combination of, hey, I think we can provide a customized plan, educational plan for our daughter, and she can still remain best friends with her siblings who weren't in school yet. Um, and so it kind of started there. And then we first grade and we put her in first grade and the same thing happened. And we're like, okay, we can do this first grade stuff too. This is easy. And so and then it just kept going and going. And we figured out a lot of things. We were actually participating in co-ops and things that helped support us in the homeschool world. But that just really got my mind going, is that education really isn't going to a school and listening to bells ring and going class to class, having homework that doesn't, maybe not very meaningful. And I thought about my education. I could not remember hardly anything. There was nothing significant about my childhood education that really changed me. So relationships did, and sometimes my efforts in athletics did, because those were very memorable, poignant times that etched a little bit of history into my heart. But for the most part, I couldn't remember anything from middle school and high school, let alone elementary, on an education level, unless I had done something or gone somewhere or built something or, did something meaningful that kind of formed an impression on me. So we thought there's so many ways to educate. And we started reading books and attending conferences, and we thought, wow, we supplemented with so many different things. Our kids did so many different things. We were non-diploma seekers. We became the biggest unschoolers that ever existed. And I went to a school every day with bells and policies and rules and, just conveyor belt learning, forever. I mean,
Like why did you decide, like it almost seems confusing, and I would be, if I was, a teacher next to you and asking you questions about the way that you're educating, I'd be kind of, like, oh wait, what? Like you're doing something that is so different for work than you are at home. Why did you do that differently?
um, I think, well, a few reasons also. First of all, I feel like I could still have an impact on kids in the classroom because my classroom was way different than the average classroom. Kids loved coming to my class. I would, like I say, I sponsored everything. I could have an additional effect on those kids. So my work became very impactful, I think, on other kids. Matter of fact, I know it did. I mean, from letters and parents and things, even in the future that I would get. But you had such an impact, and this this little thing you did was so. I'm so grateful that my child was able, just I was able to have an impact on kids, and I felt like that altruistically was some type of mission for me. And teaching, I was great at communicating. I was great at persuading kids to learn my subject. I took nothing too personally. Everything I kind of like made it like it was just, we're going to learn Spanish because I taught Spanish in high school, and it was going to be the most fun class that I could make it and still learn a ton. And we were going to do things kind of out of the ordinary. I was always behind the other teachers, and they would say, "Hey, you're behind them. You're not on this chapter." And I'm like, "I know, because we did this and this, and this was more meaningful, and they know how to speak better because I did this and this." And so I was a little bit of a rebel in the old public school system, even though I taught in it. But at home, I don't really didn't get a lot of flack for keeping my kids at home. Nobody really, they didn't care. It was kind of becoming in vogue a little bit. Some, and matter of fact, I learned as I was studying homeschooling that public school teachers and administrators homeschool their kids at a higher percent ratio than just the average person. So I thought, well, there you go. They kind of know why they want to, and they have specific reasons they want to. They see the other side and they think, hey, I can provide options for my kids, and I'm going to. And so, yeah, it worked out great.
That's awesome. And then you ended up moving to Utah at some point. Where does that fit into the story?
Yeah, we actually moved around quite a bit because we homeschooled and we could, and I could get a job anywhere. I could seriously, if we decided we wanted to move somewhere, I would go there in the summer and I would interview, and I'd have 3 or 4. For instance, we went to Colorado Springs from California, and I interviewed at 4 different districts. I got offered jobs at all 4 districts. I could take my choice. And so we just were on an adventure. It was like, let's go see the country a little bit. And in some places we had 5 acres and a farmhouse, and other places we were in neighborhoods, and sometimes we were in cities and downtown. We just got to see a lot of the world, and I think that was part of our kids' education. So coming back to Utah was just we kind of done enough of that. We thought, let's go back, and we it's funny because we ended up settling in my wife's hometown, and we'd always been looking for a quaint little town to settle in, and lo and behold, it was kind of where my wife came from. So that's
funny.
Yeah.
So you've done a lot of work inside of public schools, inside of charter schools, and then at a certain point you started doing administrative work, right? Was there like I don't know, what were the different things you were trying to change and impact? Were you trying to, help teachers see the classroom more like you did, where you would, go a little bit slower sometimes, but it would be fun? Um, what were you actively pursuing as an administrator in all of these roles?
Yeah, I think as an administrator, well, first of all, I was pursuing more money because I had to support 6 kids and a wife at home. And we were a single income family. And that was the way to do it, is that administration. But also I felt like I could have a larger effect on the whole student body instead of just the 150 kids that they would shovel through my class, my classroom every year. And that really did happen. I could do that. I hosted assemblies and I spoke, and I was able to just kind of be more, maybe more of an influence as an administrator, even though my administrative time I disliked because I'll say this, it was the majority of the work that I did was a negative type of work. It was
What do you mean?
with it. You have so many constituencies that you need to please, or that your stakeholders that you need to be responsible to, and it seemed like parents were always just a little bit miffed, and there was always somebody that wasn't getting treated right, and the parents were. So I had all kinds of. It would be hard, emotional, negative meetings with parents. Teachers were always going AWOL on me, and they would come in and gripe and cry and everything else about things in their life or the situation there and the kid and whatever. And then I was doing discipline at school. A lot of times the discipline in school takes a ton of time. Matter of fact, at one charter school I was at, K-8, I told the board, I said, look, I'm doing 50% of my time or more is with student interaction, but most of it's negative because it has to do with accountability and discipline. It's heavy, it's hard. I need help, and so it became that. I mean, you would not believe at any local high school here in Utah, I dealt with the police on a monthly basis. Oh, Yeah,
What?
we didn't have a student resource officer, but I had the police on speed dial. Everything from theft to drugs to um, you could not believe what goes on in a typical high school. And that's a great high school. Those are leadership high schools or charter high schools that were built to serve a community that is a little closer and where the kids maybe are a little more motivated. Holy cow. You know, kids will be kids and they'll make dumb decisions. And it happened. And even adults, I ended up firing adults because of stealing computers and pawning them off at local pawn shops and changing their students' grades on the state website for their whole career. I had to fire a lady for that. And she busted into the accounting as the state reporting system. I mean, it's just crazy. It goes on and on and on and on. You wouldn't believe it. I mean, affairs at the schools, and the two teachers have to be fired. I mean, just crazy, crazy. It was like a soap opera, and dealing with that on an administrative level was heavy. It was heavy, not enjoyable. I like time with the kids and activities or hosting things or dances or things where we could interact and assemblies and things or being in a classroom and learning with them as an instructional leader. That was great. But to tell you the truth, a lot of administrative stuff was heavy and negative.
It sounds like it. What is like the future that you'd love to see inside of public schools? Because I know that you're very future thinking, future forward. And I also know that, or at least what it sounds like from the conversations that we've had in the past, that you also are very optimistic about where education is headed, and you've seen the trends, you've seen how it's evolved. Um, where would you like to see public schools and traditional charter schools going?
Well, that's a great question. I would just like to see, the fact that there's choice in where you can send your student now, and there's all of these ESAs where their money is just like a voucher system. Um, I think that's going to force and is forcing schools, both public, charter, and private, to be the best they can be and be a product that the students want to come to and parents want to send their kids to. Um, I think the more that public schools participate in the capitalist society that we live in and aren't monopolies, then we'll get a better product. We'll get more innovative thinking. We'll get better educational opportunities for the kids, and ultimately, because of that, because of the creativity and the innovation, teachers and administrators will be happier. It will be more fulfilling as a group. Um, I just feel like that's the way things need to go, and I feel like they're going that way, and I think that's good. I think that's great. I mean, if you have a hamburger business right next to McDonald's and you sell crappy hamburgers, you're going out of business, and that's all there is to it. And to close a school down here or there, a public school, is not a bad thing. That's a great thing actually, because the other schools are going to become stronger, no matter what kind of schools they are, because they see that hey, kids are making the decision now that they don't have to come here. We can't force them to come here. So I think that the choice has become kind of embedded into our school society or school systems, and it's really causing improvement, innovative thinking, um, just just new forms and new styles and new opportunities for kids.
That's super fascinating. I've had a conversation with people that are quite opposed to choice actually. And something that they say, which I'd love your take on because you've been in the administrative role, you're not opposed to public schools, you've been inside of them for so long. Is that once you take out the ability or once you give people the ability to choose, you take out the I guess um the structure that exists, right? The people that are um, the most privileged will
Mm.
be the ones that can leave and everybody else stays and misses out and loses out. So whenever you were talking about like, okay, it's not bad for a public school to close, I've had this conversation before and people will like throw at me this, okay, but what about all these families that are going to lose out and whose parents don't care as much? What have you seen in this choice movement that makes you have other opinions?
Um, excuse me. I think that first of all, some of the excuse me, s- some of the people that I mean, that's real limited thinking. But good night. If you were to
If you
say like, if you
if
were to
you need
say,
to pause to get some water, you can totally do that.
I have some water here, let me take a drink.
Okay. No worries. No worries. We do post production on everything, so
I'm sure you do because I just sound like a cigar smoker. Okay. I just choke a little bit. Anyway, I think it's real limited thinking on people's parts to think that, hey, look at all the people that are missing out, or you guys are. I got accused of that all the time at charter schools of skimming the cream off the top of the student body and taking the elite, um, because they wanted to come to my school, and they wanted a different experience. But you know what? I'll tell you what. I had 20% of the population at every school I ever administered at that was special education, that had an IEP or 504, just like my public school did. I mean, we really we pulled in anybody. You can't refuse anybody in a public school. You can't say no, you can't come. You can say, hey, this is what we do, and we think this school might be too hard for you or might not fit your values. But you can't say you can't come. So if mom and dad says, I don't care, I want the small classroom size, I want the leadership program, I want the service element, I want all of this stuff for my child, you take that child and you try to help them, kind of rise to that level. Um, so I don't, I don't buy into the fact that choice skims the cream off the top. Obviously, those with more means could afford private school, but charter schools are free to everyone. So, and there's a lot of unique charters for everything from teen pregnant schools to special education schools to autistic schools to deaf schools to leadership schools to STEM schools. I mean, you can pick something that fits your fancy. I mean, that's what they're all made for. That's what they're all built for. Is to have a special magnet that pulls you to them, attracts you to them. So I really think that even with the like Utah Fits All program, where they're taking government funds now and they're actually helping the average homeschool kid or private school kid to pay for private school or to pay for some type of education that's alternative to what they would get if they went to their local school. Since I've homeschooled for 27 years, and I never got a dime of public money for my homeschooling, except except in the last couple of years um, when I worked with My Tech High OpenEd, I did, through that system. But other than that, I pay taxes just like everybody else, and I never benefited 1 ounce from the local schools. So, I mean, I think that the ESAs are kind of leveling the playing field. Um, some of them are more lucrative than others. Most of them offer the standard child a chance to do anything. If you want to homeschool or you want to private school, you want to, a country day school and you can't afford it, you can take these monies and try to go do it. I think it's great. I think that's awesome. I think that's the way it should be.
yeah, it's interesting. Um, I've seen this move toward a consumer type of view toward education, right? So like initially it's a siloed box of we can choose either or, right? And like it is how it comes and that's it. That's what we're paying for, right? But there's this move toward okay, we can choose a mix of a lot of things. And also, if for example, I put my kid in a public school and I don't like something, I also have the opportunity to get a little bit more creative with how I'm going to solve that issue. How can parents start thinking about themselves as like quote unquote education designers, right? Like instead of just being a drop off point for their kids, like a checkbox, like really thinking about the education system as something that they can um take and like and custom build. You were talking about all these choices, right? All these different things that families can now do. I think one of the harder parts is figuring out what your options are, right? So you mentioned a ton of different types of charters for special needs students, for like tons of different people with different ailments, different issues, different challenges. How
Mhm.
do people even find all the things that could be available to them?
Well, I think the first thing is that parents have to be proactive in their kids' education. They can't just default to what's always been done, because when we do what's always been done, we get the same result. And if public ed has not had great results for a long time, and they've been on the chopping block, or on funding chopping blocks. Um, we've thrown more money at it, and it hasn't gotten better. And so now it's like, what do we do? Um, Parents have to be proactive and think, hey, this does exist. They're telling me that I have money to spend on alternatives, or I can actually go to a charter school that's free. All they got to do is Google. I mean, it's not hard um, to find things. I would say that as a parent, personally, I had to be engaged in my kids' education. If I didn't care what they learned, how they learned, where they learned, or you know the the social maybe the social influences that they had. I didn't care about anything. I would just send them default to the what I would what everybody else would, or what was easiest, right? The bus comes by, let's just put them on that bus. I don't care what happens after that. I've got to have them at school because I'm working. It's got to be, parents have to think beyond that. They have to think, hey, if I'm going to invest in my kids and I want them to have the best education possible for their future, then I've got to do some research about what options I do have. And there are a ton of options. Even with my kids, we did partial high school programs sometimes. My kids were like, my oldest daughter was the queen of homecoming, and she didn't even go to the school except for like 2 hours a day. She was just cool, and she was likable, and she was smart, and she was pretty, and she put herself out there. Um, she also sang in a traveling choir. She also participated in local pageants, and my sons both played sports on the local sports team. You can We picked and choose exactly what we wanted to do. We were in debate leagues that were sponsored, we got help paid for by OpenEd. We did mock trials and local like kids court stuff for kids to participate in the legal process. Um, we did all kinds of stuff. Matter of fact, I think my one son got into BYU just because of the activities he did that were so non-standard and unorthodox, that from the normal applications they received. He wrote 4 essays that were completely different than what you'd hear maybe the run-of-the-mill BYU freshman applicant talk about. And it was because we provided those for him, but we researched it and we sent kids to it and tried it out. Some things didn't work, and we just pulled the kids out. That didn't work. But some things did. Some things were great. And then my other kids would say, "Hey, I want to do that too," or "I want to be a part of that." So it's really just it's almost like you can go to a different restaurant every night here in the Valley. It's same with education. I mean, some of my kids did welding classes at an ALC from Nebo School District. Um, you, you can do whatever they were interested in. We encouraged them to follow their passions. And you know what? My kids love to read. They love to learn. They've all done their own thing. And guess what? None of them have gone to college because none of them have seen the need to attend college to earn money for their future or to follow their passions. And they all make more money than I do. So there you go. And I've been in school for undergraduate, teaching credential, master's degree, and now I work at BYU, and all my kids make more than I do. And so there you go. They're doing just great with they follow their passions, and they went an alternative route. They saw that, book learning and attending institutions wasn't the only way to learn. And if they did what they really love to do, they could do well at it, and they could be very successful. And they have everything from construction to modeling. I'm telling you, I have it all in my family, and they all do really well.
From a practical standpoint, like you and your wife, how did you tackle this problem, quote unquote, of how do we introduce our kids to enough in order to expand their palette of like, here are all the things that I could possibly do, and then dive into the things that they're super interested in? Was it like a conscious thing? Was it kind of like you're sitting at the dinner table, you're talking to your kids about all their options and everything local and everything available? And because you're a homeschool family and you've been a homeschool family for so long, it's just kind of like this cumulative process of over time, you just try a lot of things and you get exposed to a lot of things? Or was there any master planning behind it? Was it just kind of like on a whim? How did y'all do it?
I told you we were the most unschooling homeschoolers that ever existed. If you did it in school, we did not do it at home. It looked anything like school, we threw it out the window. Because schooling is different than education in our book. We define those very differently. And anything that looked like school or schooling went out the window. Anything that looked like real education and real learning and passion, we fostered. And I think it was just being around like-minded people that would do their own research and then share with us. And then we were like, really? You can do that? Really? Your son's going there? Your daughter joined that team? Or you could actually be in this, it was paid for by this or what? I mean, it was, once you get involved in that realm, there are so many opportunities and so many people that kind of share. So we had no master plan. Our plan was to try to encourage the kids to like to learn new things and not be fixed mindset, but be growth mindset. That if I suck at this, it's because I haven't done it long enough or because I haven't tried hard enough. But if I try harder or if I practice, I could be semi-good or maybe excellent at this. I remember my son, he thought, math wasn't great for him, but he found a curriculum that really helped him a ton. It was called Teaching Textbooks. And it really spurred he thought, wow, I'm successful at this math. And he did algebra, he did geometry. And then he took this college math and got a B+ in college algebra. I myself never passed college algebra. I took dummy college algebra 1 and 2, and I got like C's. And then when I would take the real thing, I'm like, oh, I found out I could substitute that for some foreign language. And I ended up taking a ton of foreign language, so I substituted it. So I tell him, man, son, you passed it at like 17, what I couldn't pass when I was 23 years old. And
Wow.
and that's just because he experienced it and he tried it and he found something that worked for him. It wasn't sitting in the classroom with some squawking and then doing homework and coming back. That didn't work for him. Because we tried different levels of that at co-ops and things. So I think it's just trial and error. You just try things, and if they work, they work. Matter of fact, not one of our students did the same math program in high school or junior high. It was all different. We started this kind of the same as they were little, but as they got older, different things worked, different math methods worked, different courses, different co-ops, different teachers worked. And so we just let them do what they wanted to do. My kids consumed library books at an insane level. And that's because we never put them to do anything. All my kids read at 7. All their Sunday school teachers were saying, your kid can't read and they're in this level. And here's some phonics stuff you should practice at home. We're like, no, we're good. We're good. Our kids are good. We're going to let them read when they naturally read. And they all read at about 7, 8 years old. They started reading, but then they never stopped reading. And I never read a book when I was a teenager, not one, except unless you force me to read it for a class. My kids read and they still read. It's amazing. They still read tons and they still learn on their own. And so I don't know, some things pay off, right? If I think you do them a different way.
It's interesting though, like a lot of families are really afraid of the unpredictability of like, and I guess a different approach, right? Like,
Yeah.
Homeschool is scary a little bit for parents, especially to take on, because you bear the full burden of responsibility. Like if your kid does not turn out correctly, or if you feel like they're not as successful as they possibly could have been, like there's nobody else you can blame. You can't look at a school, you can't look at a teacher, right? You have to look at yourself and like your family and the way that you made choices and things like that. Why were you and your wife so comfortable with that? And especially with like all of these decisions as they came along, like y'all were way ahead of most people whenever it came to, hey, our kid is 7 years old and like they'll read. Like we just know it. Like they will read. And like, just the whole unschooling approach as well. Like, that's not necessary for my kid to be educated, right? Like, Um, why were these very uncommon, almost like quote unquote risky by other people approaches so comfortable for you and your wife to make?
Yeah, I think that maybe first of all, it would probably be my wife's personality. She's kind of a Pippi Longstocking at heart, and if we had it her way, we'd probably, we'd live in a tent somewhere, or we'd be gypsies and travel around. Um, so she was really fun loving and carefree. I was more regimented and left brained, and hey, we got to have structure. Hey, we got to do this. And then I learned that hey, kids kind of hate that. They kind of hate to be forced to do anything, or uh, anytime you I hate that. You hate that. Anytime anybody kind of forces you to do something, or makes you make a decision a certain way, you're like, you kind of naturally, human nature is you rebel. So we just thought, we're going to let kids try to set it out there for them, let them make their decisions, and do the best we can. I don't know. We just weren't scared about how it would turn out. We had a lot of support through our community, this homeschool community we were in. Um, we saw my kids interacted with everybody at church and the neighborhood and everything just fine. There was no social issues. That was the least of our worries. Our kids were too social. Um, So I don't know. There was just no fear there. There was no fear that it wouldn't turn out right. Like people always worry, especially teachers. Oh, this homeschool kid came into my geometry class and they have so many gaps in their algebra learning. And I'm like, yeah, but who says algebra comes before geometry? Maybe they learn, and who says you say those are gaps? But my son, like I said, my son wasn't great at math, and now he does land. He does construction, and he is specifically does laser leveled um, excavation, where he's like calculating things that mean something, and he does really well at solving problems. I think that's the thing. You teach kids to solve problems, and you've covered you've covered. You don't have to worry about the textbook learning. They can solve an issue. I work with grown adults. I manage grown adults right now, and I can't get some adults to think past, what do you want me to do on this? Well, I don't want you to do it. I want you to figure it out and create a strategy. Well, what does that mean? How do I do that? I don't know. That's up to you. You need to do this. They can't, because they've learned a different way. They've learned how to learn differently. And the learning that they've had is, tell me what to do and I'll do it. And they're really good at that. But they're not good at solving problems, taking all this information, synthesizing it and going, wow, come up with a better solution, or this is what Dave is looking for. That's difficult for them a lot of times. And I pound my head against the wall going, oh my gosh, if I had a boss that would have told me to solve my own problems, or solve this problem and it's wide open, I could do it myself. I would love that. I would thrive on that, just because my mindset now is really innovative and creative and growth minded. And I can do this if I put my head to it. Yeah, even adults, solving issues is solving problems with a set of data is very difficult.
It's interesting. Um, I forget what book I was reading about this, but it was basically about like the value of predictability. Like at some point we restructured the way that companies were run. I think this was like a German thing. I can't remember what exactly it came from, but at a certain point we restructured how companies were run because we realized that there was an opportunity for us to like basically forecast that if we did it this way, then we could hit these revenue goals, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Right. But like what we did in that is we created boxes for workers, right? It was like, you do this, like, this is your job. Don't think outside of it. And like kind of what you were saying, I know a lot of people whose like one aspiration, especially like young people, is give me room to like run, give me room to think through things, give me room to like strategize and try and problem solve this myself.
Mhm.
Um, and it's very fascinating because you're right. The requirements that we had for work have changed the way that we approach school and vice versa, right? And so now it's like, okay, hold on a second, but we're missing out on certain parts of development that would be really, really, really incredible. Like, for example, confidence inside of young individuals. Like,
Mhm.
confidence to say, hey, I'm gonna take this bet. Hey, I'm willing to bear the burden of, the responsibility of this decision. Nobody wants to do that anymore. And like, I don't have an issue with like what's it called, like research firms or anything, but like
Yeah.
it's very interesting to me because research firms were created so that people uh could have reasons for making the decisions that they were. So it's like here's all this data that backs up the decision that I'm making because like I don't want to be the only one that's on the hook for it,
Yeah.
right? And so it's like really interesting because that's really what we've created a society around is like instead of people that are confident and willing to bear the brunt of the responsibility of choices of of these things like you're saying, um, we have kids that can check boxes and that can like do what they're told.
Mhm.
Um, it sounds like your kids are very, very, very strong individuals. Would you say that?
Oh yeah. Yeah. They're super strong. They're super confident in whatever they do. I mean, it could be wrong, but they're confident they're going to succeed. And they may be going down a hill, but you have to let them spiral sometimes, and then find out, hey, that didn't work so good. I, I'll share this. I've attended some seminars and I've learned at Google offers 20% of an employee's time as innovative time, where they get to work on
That's cool.
they can work on anything they want. They can solve any problem they want. Um, and that's where an institute called Search Inside Yourself, emotional intelligence came out of, was an engineer of all things, wanted to solve the issue of emotional intelligence and people's ability to be emotionally intelligent in the workplace. And he broke off and wrote his own book. And he doesn't work for Google anymore. He makes millions of dollars writing his own book, doing seminars, and and I've attended their trainings, the Search Inside Yourself trainings. They're fantastic. It's awesome. It's awesome for workplace. It's awesome for personal, for relationships, for family. But that came out of an innovative approach from Google to say, hey, you don't have to work in the box. You work outside of the box for 20% of the time and see what you can come up with that innovative that may take you down a different road. We don't care. We want to help you get to where you're going in life. We don't need you to be on a conveyor belt stamping things or just putting screws in things in our big development here. We need you to grow. And I think when we have that mentality, it's the options or the results are going to be totally different than if we put them in boxes and say, this is what you do. Don't do anything else. This is our policy. And that I fight that in my work all the time. I work for a big institution, BYU, right? We're huge. Um, and because we're big, we're not agile and we're not real creative and innovative sometimes. We have policies that are set and I buck the policies all the time on behalf of the customer. I'm like, the customer doesn't they need exception here. I mean, I just did one just yesterday where I give a 14-year-old a scholarship for a university course. Well, that's against the policy. I'm like, I don't care. Here's the situation. It's the foster child of a parent that approached me at a conference that is trying, they're gonna age out before they can go to college and they don't think they're gonna go to college and they're in a crappy situation. If they can take some college classes before they get out of high school, they think they might be able to show them that they're intelligent, they can do it, and they might be able to go to school and get an education, do something else with their training. And so instead of aging out, just having a high school diploma and not having much confidence or much future. And so, I bucked all the policies here, got the kid the scholarship, and they're going to start on a psychology course this year as a 14-year-old. I mean, I'm all about that. I love that. I love when parents come to me and ask me for exceptions because I make them happen here. And I think I did the exact same thing in public school where there was a lot of boundaries and a lot of fences. I just butted through the fences and said, I think we can do this. And they were like, well, how? Well, I think we do this, this, and this. Okay, go for it. Every now and then, if you can talk people into it, a lot of times your superiors will say, yeah, if it's better for our clientele or for our kids, let's try it. And a lot of it worked. A lot of it was fun.
Yeah, I love like that is one of my favorite things in the world. I also love not bucking the system, but kind of like really asking the question like, okay, well, what is this rule and like why is it here to begin with? And the
Mhm.
more that you ask the why question, then you realize, oh, okay, so this this rule was built because of this exact situation. Like, does this still apply? Or like, how can I think about this differently so that it is a different problem, right? And like, um, I mean, for example, like we have a ton of laws in the United States, and like most laws in the United States are quote unquote set, but like they've been set by somebody at some point because of something that happened. So the more that you understand the history of why you have rules and what rules there are and what policies there are, the more that you understand, okay, well, like obviously we don't want there's that whole like belief that, okay, well, if there's a fence, you don't want to move it until you know why it's there, right? And that is a very, very important point. But like once you start unraveling and understanding, okay, here's the law that somebody made, or here's the policy somebody made, they were doing that the best that they possibly could in the moment. They didn't know that this situation was going to come up. They didn't know that, this person needed this in this way.
Mm.
They were trying to solve for something else. And here's why I can, change this in this moment because of, whatever it is.
Right. But you had to approach that fence. You had to take that fence apart a little bit to look at it and say, hey, that reasoning's kind of weak. Can I present some other data and reasoning that would tell us why we should break this fence down right here, make a gate? So you have to go there and you have to think through it. I flew on Southwest Airlines the other day, and this is my new motto. Actually, it was not the other day. It was a couple of years ago. But my new motto on their little napkin, they said, "In a world full of no, we're a plane full of yes." And I told my guys and my sales team, that's exactly our motto. I don't care if it's our institution full of no, the world full of no, where everyone else might say no, we're going to say yes, and then we're going to figure out a way to do that. If you work for In-N-Out Burger, when they train you, they have 2 customer service rules, only 2. That makes it super easy for the employees. And the first one is the customer's always right. Period. The second one is if you think you're right, refer to rule number 1. And so you basically, if you have that attitude, the customer's always right. So if they're asking for something that's out of the ordinary or that's weird or that you don't normally do or that's bound by a policy, we couldn't ever do that. Think how you could solve that. Think how you could work through that. I love that. I love that. I want to say yes to everyone. Obviously, there's some parameter. I'll say yes to everyone in some form. I'll modify that yes, but I'll say yes to almost everyone that approaches me. If I can do anything for them at all, whether it be personal or whether it be in work. But a lot of times in education, we should be the same way. Could we teach a kid this way? Could they learn anything this way? I say yes, and let's figure out how. Um, let's
I love
don't.
that.
You know what I mean? It's just open-mindedness to learning a different way or to doing things a different way.
Yeah, I always share this example because I love it. Our VP of learning, her name is Andrea. She's amazing. And she has a son that goes to a public school. But she's chosen that, which is kind of funny. Like she is championing open education, and like she chooses a public school because they're innovative enough to work with her on these things. So like if she doesn't like a rule, right? She understands why the rule was set, and then she goes to them and asks them a question. So she didn't like a class that her son was taking. He needed an extra credit in an elective. So she asked if she could build her own course for him. And they were like, I don't know. And like and so she always has reasons and explanations and like understands exactly what needs to work because she's been an administrator before. And so like she can come in here and say, okay, I know that you need these things. Here's how I'm going to get them done. And is this okay? And like
Yeah.
they're all so open to it once you understand how the system works. I mean, I guess not in every district are they that open to it, but I think that approach of yes and let's figure it out is awesome. So it's like, okay, your kid really likes this subject. They like it in this way. How can we bring X into this? Even if it is just they could do this at home. Like for educators to approach education and a child's individual education with that thinking cap of how do we solve for the unique problems as they come up, it's just really fascinating. I kind of want to steer us into BYU. So you are an open ed partner. Can you share a little bit about what you do for people listening and for people that might be interested in using your program through open ed?
Sure. So BYU Independent Study is what we offer. we actually just signed a contract with OpenEd to just offer curriculum, and OpenEd's teachers will be administering that. So that's brand new this year. So you can be looking forward to that. That should be an option in the, curriculum uh, uh, options that parents have for kids. But typically, we provide courses in online courses that are, wow, every core course that we cover every core, and then probably over 100 electives. So we have over 215 some odd middle school to high school courses. Um, a ton of stuff to choose from. But I think the unique thing that we do at BYU, and it's just in the last few years, we've rewritten our courses with a new design model. And the design model is called KSA, K for knowledge, S for skills, and A for attributes. So if a homeschool family decides to take a BYU class, they're going to find that the students are not only going to get the knowledge that they would need in like a biology class, uh, and it's going to be aligned to standards and state standards, and they can get their graduation diploma with the Carnegie unit that they earned from our course, which is all very typical. But we've also woven in a skill, a 21st century skill. And in biology, it happens to be critical thinking, and it's broken down to interpretation and analysis, which fits biology really well. As you're going to, hypothesize about how some things are going to turn out as you do labs and you do experiments and you work with living organisms. And in that section of skill, the student can choose to do a little bit more. So we're offering even choice within our courses for the student to say, hey, I like this skill and I think I'm pretty good at it, or I'd like to get better at it. So I'm going to do some extra activities. And we offer them a micro credential for doing a little extra. So they get a little badge. It's a micro credential, electronic badge. That's a Canvas badge they can use in the future for applications, resumes, scholarships, whatever they want. It's just something that's a distinguisher that stands them out from everyone else. And sometimes kids love the little extra motivation in a class. So it provides extra motivation. It offers them the ability to earn something that could be beneficial in the future. Besides just getting a grade in that class, they get a little micro credential. In that biology class, we also teach an attribute. So this is all woven into a biology class. This isn't a separate curriculum for skills or study skills or life skills, and a separate curriculum for emotional competency, right? We teach the attribute that we teach is one of 9, and it happens to be resilience in biology. So we teach resilience as an attribute. We talk about biologists, and in the biology field, who is resilient, who's been resilient, and what's that produced, and what does that mean, and what does it mean for them in their lives, and are you resilient, and why aren't you resilient, or why are you resilient? Are your parents resilient? Who do you know that's resilient? How can you be more resilient? They do some self-analysis, and they get a little bit more of a holistic approach to education than just the book learning. They're going to learn a skill. They may hate biology when they're done, but that skill might be something they'll take and use somewhere else in another class. Sometimes it's like doing PowerPoint presentations, creating digital presentations, and maybe they're really good at that, and they take that and use that all over the place. So hopefully they take something away from our course, whether it be the love of biology, the love of that skill they learn, or just enhancing or increasing a skill that they already have, or just analyzing themselves as to their emotional intelligence and where they stand with resilience and trying to improve that aspect of their life. So that's really unique in how we offer our courses. I think it's the feedback we've had from moms and dads and kids is, hey, they've loved those courses. They've been much more dynamic. They're much more interactive than our prior legacy courses. We've had a lot of success in the last year as we've launched these, about a year and a half. And I think, I mean, that's pretty much what we offer. So every course you can think of, from sports and entertainment marketing to, we do a lot of CTE courses, so career and technical education courses where kids can explore careers. We teach 9 languages. We're a big language, as you can imagine, with BYU. You can learn Russian, Japanese, Korean, Spanish, ASL, German, French, and Latin with us. So we don't just teach Spanish and German, right? And they're awesome courses. They're super interactive. We have AP courses if kids want to challenge themselves and get some college credit. We have 9 AP courses. We're adding We're adding other ones as we speak, some English course, English AP. We teach, we have like 10 or 12, 10 to 12 like PE courses. So homeschoolers have to have PE credit. So we give them credit for cycling, for weightlifting, for aerobics, for swimming, uh, for anything they want to do, almost a ton of sports that they do, that they keep logs and they get credit for. I don't think people understand kind of maybe the breadth of what we offer, but those are just a few of the libraries that are really strong for us. And some, for instance, the state of Washington, we sell more PE classes than anything else because kids in the public school, even the public school and charter schools, they don't want to dress out. They don't want to take PE at school. They'd rather do something on their own, like walking or jogging, and they can all do that. And so, yeah, I think we kind of fit the needs for in a lot of different areas for kids.
Side question, you mentioned Washington. Are there a lot of homeschoolers in Washington?
Yes.
Interesting. I've read something previously that said that there are a lot of really strict guidelines for being able to be a homeschooler, though. Like you have to have formal training of some sort. Um, is that true, or what is the homeschool world like in Washington?
Well, I couldn't speak specific to law in Washington. I do know that it's open because but we do have a large segment of public schoolers and charter schoolers and private schoolers that use us in Washington also. So I can't say that homeschooling, is that's the only means to take an online course, or just, it's not super strong. Some states are very restrictive. Some states are super homeschool friendly.
Mm-hmm.
It just kind of depends. And it could depend legislature to legislative session to legislative session each year. Sometimes crazy laws are passed. We're always fighting California. Well, California's always fighting it seems like homeschool options and just school choice. I think that's because, and I say this because I worked in it, the teachers unions are so strong. The CTA, the California Teachers Association, is so strong and has so much political clout and so much money from dues that every educator pays mandatorily, that I paid when I worked in California, that they affect the agenda, the educational agenda in states. So it just depends state to state how homeschool friendly things are. Now there's a ton of homeschoolers in California. I'm telling you that. I mean, it doesn't work them, but yeah, there'll be certain regulations in each state that say, oh, you may have to have some formal preparation. Usually that's not the case. You may have to register, which usually is the case, register with the state and say I'm homeschooling. And you may have to cover certain topics, like the core subjects or something. And, it just depends from state to state. We find, and we work in all 50 states, so we find it different in every state.
Yeah, it's interesting. We've been going into more states recently, and it seems like there's two different things that make something homeschool friendly or not. It's the number of requirements and or the complexity of requirements and the number of resources and how difficult they are to get. So like resources can be anything from options, like for example, an OpenEd, or it can be something like, do you actually have really strong communities of homeschoolers around you? And there's varying levels of both in basically every state, which is really fascinating. As y'all have moved around, how have you tapped into homeschool groups as you like settled down somewhere? How do you like start that whole process over again?
As a family, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, as a family, gosh, that was just doing some little personal research. The best thing to do is go to a homeschool resource for curriculum. If there's a homeschool store of any type or a curriculum resource, if you go there, they'll have names and numbers and Facebook pages of local co-ops, and now the micro schools has become a fad, whatever it may be, that you can connect with. And you connect with one person and you've connected with 100 instantly. And, oh, we have Park Day tomorrow. You should come. Okay, we went to Park Day. We met 17 other families. Oh, my goodness. And they belong to other organizations and do other co-ops and do other things. So it's super easy if you can find a homeschool resource in your area. That's usually one of the best ways. But Googling homeschool co-ops in your area, I mean, that's how we market at BYU sometimes to homeschool places. And I'm sure OpenEd, when they expanded to different states, they had to do research about homeschooling in the state, and where, if there was a state organization, sometimes there's Christian homeschool conferences. We attended those often, and then we just found out a ton there and met a ton of like-minded people. So I'd say attending conferences or a local resource, a curriculum resource is a great way to do it.
That's a great piece of advice. My last question for you. So you've done OpenEd with your family. For families that are looking at BYU as a potential resource that they're going to purchase this next year, why would they choose it over other resources? Like, what are these families looking for that makes BYU the perfect choice for them?
I would say, well, if you're looking for a diploma, obviously BYU is accredited, and so you're going to get an accredited transcript. You get a transcript from us you can take anywhere. Also, BYU has a lot of clout in the education world. We go around the country, and as soon as we say BYU, they either know our sports teams, or they know our institution for something, or they recognize us from somewhere, from BYU TV oftentimes. And so we have clout throughout the country. And I think that lends to I don't know, maybe the trust that people have in taking a BYU class. We have some states around the country where kids they'll take BYU because they know, no, I'm taking BYU because I know BYU. I mean, Alaska of all places, they love BYU because they know the name and they know the university. I also say what we talked about before, the experience in the class is good. It's kid friendly. It's fun. It's engaging, and it's holistic. So they're not going to just get information, crammed down the throat. It's actually going to expound, hopefully, their personal, emotional well-being and their personal that just develop skills that they may not know they had. There's a lot of reasons. Also, we're very flexible. You get a year to finish a course. And a lot of homeschoolers take a lot of time to do things, and we're always late to everything. I know that from being a homeschooler. So the time element is very, very attractive for homeschoolers.
That's a great pitch. Anybody, if you want to check out BYU and the courses that they offer through OpenEd, we'll leave all of those linked in the description of this podcast episode. This has been a really awesome podcast, Dave. It has been so cool to hear your experience and really fascinating because usually I hear it the opposite way where somebody is a public school teacher and then they go full on onto the other side of the world where they go all in on homeschool and alt ed. And it's really interesting to hear how you have championed actual education inside of schools where there were a lot of barriers for yourself and for your students, and how you saw kind of a light through that, as you saw that you had an opportunity to create something that nobody else was going to. So super fascinating. And I think it's also just so great to hear from families who have succeeded through homeschooling, because that's always some parents' biggest fear is like, how do I know my kids are going to be okay? And like you said, from your experience, looking at other families whose kids turned out very, very well, gave you a lot of reassurance in your own journey.
That's totally true. And you kind of have to, I've once heard that the art of parenting is the ability to know when to release your kids and when to let them go. And that's really the truth. And when they go, they just go the direction they're going to go. Like every kid has their own passion, their own journey. And even if they make wrong steps along the way, you can't blame yourself. It's like you asked before about parent, how are you so confident? Well, it's like anybody who's a parent. I mean, kids turn out to be goofballs sometimes in their adolescence or in their young adult lives, and they don't make very good decisions for a long time. But we just hope they turn around at some point. So same thing. Yeah.
Well, this has been awesome. I think this is a perfect note to end it on. Thanks so much, Dave, for coming on.
Sure. Thank you all.